Welcome to this 365 Freedom Strategy session. Today we're breaking down the mechanics of sales momentum and why your biggest business bottleneck is your addiction to the big push.
It really is an addiction, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about holding your breath, right? Imagine just holding your breath for 3 solid minutes.
Which is agonizing.
Totally. You are completely starving your brain of oxygen. and then you instantly try to walk out onto a stage.
Right, to deliver some charismatic keynote speech.
Exactly. You're trying to be articulate and smooth, but you're just gasping. You're red in the face.
Sweating profusely.
Yeah, and you are absolutely terrifying your audience in the process.
Because you look like you're dying up there.
Right. Well, if you are only selling your products or services, once a quarter, that is exactly what you are doing to your business.
That's such a perfect analogy. You're artificially suffocating the business.
Yeah. So today we are treating the session as an internal, really surgical review of how you operate on a daily basis.
Because it's a phenomenon almost every single founder faces. Creators, business owners, everybody.
Yet they universally misdiagnose it.
Oh, constantly.
Yeah.
They think it's something else entirely.
Right. You're sitting there listening to this thinking, well, I have a sales problem, or maybe a conversion problem.
Or a positioning problem. That's a big one. People always blame positioning.
Yeah, exactly. But when we actually look under the hood of your operations, it's none of that. You have a momentum
A
problem.
massive momentum problem.
To be hyper-specific, it's a pacing problem.
Hmm.
And it is completely rooted in how you view the act of selling itself.
Which is usually with a lot of dread, frankly.
So true. So, by the end of our discussion today, we are going to shift your entire paradigm. We're moving from what we call emotional selling to procedural selling.
That shift is everything. It's the whole ballgame.
It really is. And we're going to neutralize that incredibly heavy burden of making an offer.
Because it doesn't have to be heavy. That's the biggest misconception.
No, it doesn't. But why do we make it so heavy? Why is sales momentum so misunderstood by founders?
Well, there's this pervasive, almost romanticized myth in the business world, right? People think momentum is loud.
Yes. They think it's this huge, dramatic event.
Exactly. They think it requires an incredible amount of hype. Just tons of caffeine, raw energy, constant pushing.
You see it on social media all the time, the hustle culture of it all.
Right. But when we actually sit down and analyze the behavioral patterns of really successful, low-stress operators.
The ones who aren't burning out every 6 months?
Yeah, the ones running multi-million-dollar businesses quietly, we see the exact opposite.
The exact opposite.
True sales momentum is quiet. It's not dramatic in the slightest.
It requires basically zero hype, right?
Zero.
Yeah.
It is entirely built through very small, very quiet, highly consistent offers.
Okay, so let's dissect that. Let's look at why that dramatic approach, the big push, fails so spectacularly.
And why the quiet approach inevitably wins out in the long run.
I want to start by looking at the specific way you, the listener, are likely sabotaging yourself right now.
Because you probably are. We all do it before we learn this.
Yeah, let's look at the pathology of this problem before we try to prescribe a fix.
Good idea. The default behavior pattern is so predictable.
It is. It goes exactly like this. You avoid selling most days.
Yep. Monday through Friday, totally silent on the sales front.
And behind the scenes, the internal pressure just builds, right? The financial pressure is mounting.
Oh, the pressure cooker is definitely on.
And then suddenly, out of sheer panic-induced necessity, you execute this massive, exhausting, big push.
It is a textbook pathology, and we really need to dig into the psychology of that avoidance phase.
Why is it so destructive? Because it feels safe at the time, doesn't it?
It does. That's the tricky part.
Yeah.
It rarely looks like avoidance to the person actually doing it.
What does it look like to them?
It looks like nobility. When you refuse to sell regularly, you usually do it under the guise of adding value.
Ah, right. I'm nurturing the audience.
Exactly. You convince yourself that you are being this phenomenal brand steward by not bothering your people.
Right. You're sitting there thinking, well, I'm building community right now.
Yeah, I can't possibly taint this beautiful community with a sales pitch.
You feel like the good guy. You think, I'm not like those sleazy internet marketers who pitch every day. I give everything away for free.
You're wearing a halo. But let's look at what's actually happening behind the scenes while you wear that halo.
The reality of the math.
The financial reality.
Yeah.
Because running your business doesn't stop just because you decided you're in a nurture phase.
No, it doesn't. Your software subscriptions, they don't pause.
Payroll definitely doesn't pause.
Your mortgage doesn't care about your nurture phase.
Exactly. The need for revenue remains a constant, immovable reality. It's just gravity.
So when you artificially suppress your sales actions, what happens?
The internal pressure just mounts. You're watching your striped dashboard.
Oh, man. Hitting refresh.
Yeah, hitting refresh. And you're watching the cash flow slowly trickle down. And your anxiety just steadily, quietly rises.
I've been there. It is truly awful. You're putting on this smiling face for your audience.
Doing all of these great, highly produced educational videos.
Right, or writing these deep, thoughtful newsletters. But internally, your chest literally feels tight when you look at the end-of-month projections.
Because the math isn't mathing.
And eventually, that pressure reaches a critical mass, right?
It has to. You can no longer ignore it. So, what do?
You launch a massive campaign.
You send 5 emails in a single week.
After being an absolute ghost for an entire month.
Right. You just bombard them. You post relentlessly on every single platform.
And your language totally changes. Suddenly it's all doors closing and last chance.
High urgency, high stress. But here is the absolute truth about that specific behavior.
Let's hear it.
That eventual big push isn't actually a strategic launch. Not at all.
What is it then?
It is a pressure release valve for your own anxiety. You are taking your internal financial panic and projecting it directly onto the market, but you're disguising it as a marketing event.
Okay, I have to stop you there and push back a little bit.
Go for it.
Because if I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Isn't a launch just a standard business model?
Sure, it is a model.
Like Apple launches the new iPhone, right? Major fashion brands do these big seasonal drops.
Yes, they do.
We see massive, incredibly successful companies do big hyped events all the time. So why is a big push inherently toxic to momentum if it's this proven multi-billion-dollar thing?
That is a really important distinction to make. Let's separate the two entirely.
Okay.
A strategic launch, when it's executed as part of a broader, well-paced business model, is perfectly fine.
So launches aren't evil?
No, not at all. A calculated event can be highly effective. The problem is not the concept of a launch.
What's the problem?
The problem is your addiction to the big push as your sole, exclusive method of generating revenue.
Ah, when it's the only tool in the toolbox.
Precisely. When your entire financial survival relies on these sporadic, desperate explosions of effort, it absolutely kills your baseline conversion.
And it annihilates your momentum.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because it makes every single ask feel unbearably heavy to you.
Right, because that one single ask, that one email, it carries weeks or months of your hesitation.
It carries all your avoidance.
Yeah.
And all your financial expectations are riding on that one moment.
The stakes just become impossibly high.
Exactly. You mentioned Apple. Apple does not rely on the iPhone launch event to keep the lights on in October.
They don't.
No. They have millions of recurring iCloud subscriptions, daily App Store revenue, Mac sales. They have a massive, steady baseline carrying them.
So when a founder uses a launch just to save their quarter to pay their rent, it's a completely different energy.
It's a completely different universe of energy.
I see. So it's the difference between, like, an elite athlete competing in a scheduled championship game that they've trained year-round for versus someone who hasn't exercised in 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And they suddenly try to run a marathon because their doctor told them they're pre-diabetic and they panicked.
That is exactly it. One is a planned peak of professional performance.
Right, the other.
The other is a desperate, reactive sprint driven entirely by fear.
Man. And when you are operating from that place of desperate, reactive sprinting, your audience feels it, don't they?
They feel every ounce of it. You cannot hide the emotional weight of a big push when it is the only time you show up to sell.
The friction of the ask just becomes enormous.
Because you only sell occasionally, the ask actually feels like an intrusion to you.
You feel guilty even bringing it up.
Exactly. And because it feels heavy and uncomfortable to you, the seller, you project that exact discomfort right onto your audience.
They act like a mirror.
They mirror your hesitation perfectly.
This circles right back to the swimming analogy I used earlier, the holding your breath thing.
Let's expand on that.
Imagine you're swimming laps in a pool. The proper way to swim freestyle is rhythmic breathing, right?
Yeah. Stroke, a breath, a stroke, a breath.
Exactly. You turn your head, you take a small breath every 3 strokes, and you just keep going. It's smooth, it's continuous.
It's a procedural.
Right. But instead, you decide you're just not going to breathe.
Because you think breathing slows you down.
Exactly. You tell yourself, I don't want to disrupt my form. I want to add value to the water. I'm just going to swim as hard as I can without breathing.
Which is insane.
Right. So you keep swimming and the carbon dioxide starts building up in your bloodstream.
Your lungs are literally screaming at you.
The pressure becomes absolute agony in your chest. And finally, when your brain realizes, hey, we are going to drown.
You violently break the surface.
Yes. You break the surface and you just gasp desperately for air. You're thrashing around. You're frantic.
You look like you're drowning.
It isn't smooth. It isn't elegant. You are just trying to survive the lap.
And that frantic, thrashing gasp for air that is your big push.
Right. Because if you refuse to breathe normally and consistently in your business, and let's be really clear here, making offers is the actual oxygen of your business.
It's the only oxygen.
Eventually, you are forced to desperately gasp for revenue. A big push is usually just a founder thrashing in the water because they artificially deprive themselves of oxygen for 3 months.
Let's look at the physiological toll that takes on you as a human being, too.
The actual body stress.
Yeah. The sheer cortisol spike required to execute a massive push after months of total avoidance, it's staggering.
It's got to be exhausting.
You are asking your central nervous system to go from a resting state of avoidance directly into a state of maximum output.
High-stakes performance. Total public vulnerability.
It is completely unsustainable biology. You might survive the gasp.
You might get the oxygen you need for that month to pay the bills.
But you collapse afterward. You experience a massive adrenaline hangover.
Oh man, the adrenaline hangover. I can speak to this personally.
Tell me about it.
A few years ago, I did exactly this. I completely avoided pitching a new cohort for my mastermind for 2 straight months.
What was your excuse?
Oh, I told myself I was tweaking the curriculum. Right. But then cash got tight. So I ran this massive, intense 10-day email sprint.
How did that feel?
Terrible. I was up until 2 a.m. writing copy every night. I was checking Stripe every 5 minutes on my phone. My heart was just racing all week.
Did you hit the goal?
We did hit the revenue goal. But the following Saturday, I literally could not get off the couch.
You crashed.
Completely. I was staring at the ceiling, feeling totally hollowed out, irritable, and completely burnt out.
And what happened after that? Let me guess.
Because I felt so awful from the push. I didn't want to think about selling again for another 2 months.
That is the exact cycle. You avoid, you panic, you push, you crash, and then you avoid again.
It's a violent boom and bust cycle.
Energy and revenue, just booming and busting. And during that avoidance phase, while you're recovering on the couch, there is zero momentum.
None at all.
You're essentially stopping the car, turning off the engine, throwing away the keys into the woods.
And then trying to push the car from a dead stop every single time you need to move forward.
Which means we need a totally different mechanical approach here.
So let's get into the clinical reality of this. I want to invent a hypothetical founder right now.
Okay, let's build an avatar.
Let's call him the exhausted seller.
Fitting.
This represents a specific set of behaviors we see constantly when we're auditing businesses. This exhausted seller is completely paralyzed.
And why are they paralyzed?
Because they are waiting for the perfect moment to talk about their offer.
Ah, the perfect moment. Let's deconstruct what that actually looks like in their head. Because it's a fascinating psychological trap.
It really is. What are they waiting for usually?
Usually this seller is waiting for a holy trinity of conditions.
The Holy Trinity. Okay, what's number 1?
Number 1, the right internal energy. Number 2, total confidence in their messaging.
And number 3?
Number 3, a clear, undeniable signal from the market.
Okay, but see, when you are in the thick of it, when you're the founder, that sounds incredibly reasonable.
It sounds incredibly professional.
Right. If I'm that founder, I'm sitting at my desk on a Tuesday morning, I'm staring at a blank Google Doc, and I'm telling myself, hey, I'm not avoiding sales.
No, I'm being strategic.
Exactly. I'm just waiting until my energy is fully aligned so I can show up authentically.
Authenticity is such a trap word here.
And I tell myself, I'm just waiting until I feel 100% confident in this new landing page copy.
Which you never will.
And honestly, I should probably wait to see how the market reacts to this new economic news before I launch anything.
It masquerades as high-level strategic patience, doesn't it?
It really does. It feels smart.
But it is actually a brilliant, deeply sophisticated disguise for pure fear.
So let's tear it down. Why is this Holy Trinity an illusion?
Well, let's take the first one. Waiting for the right energy. What are you actually doing when you do that?
You're letting your feelings run the company.
You are admitting that your business operations are entirely tethered to your fluctuating emotional state.
That's dangerous.
You're operating on emotion, not process. Think about how incredibly fragile that is.
It's terrifying.
You are allowing your revenue, the livelihood of your team, and your own financial security to be dictated by whether or not you had a good night's sleep.
Or whether you had an argument with your spouse that morning.
Exactly. Or if you just happen to feel particularly charismatic on a random Thursday afternoon.
That means your business has no actual structural integrity. It's not a machine. It's a mood ring.
A mood ring, that's exactly what it is. It's a house of cards built entirely on your emotional weather.
So what about the second part of the Trinity? Waiting for total confidence.
That one is even more insidious. People fundamentally misunderstand how confidence works on a neurobiological level.
How so?
Confidence is not a prerequisite for action.
You don't get it beforehand.
Right. You don't get confidence and then mysteriously have the courage to do the hard thing. Confidence is a byproduct of action.
You do the thing to get the confidence.
Yes. The longer you sit in silence, staring at that blank Google Doc, waiting for confidence to just magically wash over you, the further away it gets.
I really want to dig into that paradox for a second. Why does waiting actually breed insecurity?
Let's look at it objectively.
Because intuitively, if I step back, take a month off from selling to, quote, build my confidence.
Right. You read a few books on copywriting.
Yeah, I refine my offer in a spreadsheet. Shouldn't I feel much better when I finally come back to the market? Why does taking a break make the fear worse?
Because in that month of silence, the stakes have artificially compounded in your own mind. Look at the math of it. If you sell every single day, or let's say you make a soft offer every single week, the outcome of any single sale is statistically insignificant.
It's just a drop in the bucket.
It's just a data point. If someone unsubscribes or says no on a Wednesday, it genuinely does not matter.
Because you're going to make another calm offer on Friday anyway.
Exactly. The stakes are beautifully low. You have a very large sample size.
But when you wait a full quarter to make an offer,
you have placed the entire burden of that quarter's revenue on one single performance. You've spent hours agonizing over the phrasing, the timing, the exact email sequence. You have built a monument to this one event in your head.
so the action has become incredibly heavy.
Heavy with financial expectation and heavy with emotional expectation. Of course, you feel wildly insecure.
You've basically engineered a high-anxiety do-or-die scenario for yourself.
You're demanding perfection from yourself because you've left yourself zero margin for error.
That makes total sense. You've essentially told your brain, hey, if this one single email doesn't crush it, we can't pay rent.
No wonder you're sweating over the send button.
But let's look at the third piece of their holy trinity, waiting for a clear signal from the market.
This is my favorite one.
What on earth does that even mean in practice? Do founders honestly expect the market to send up a flare?
Apparently they do.
Like, hey, we are all ready to buy your coaching program right now. Please sell to us.
It is the ultimate abdication of responsibility. You don't want to feel the discomfort of initiating the sale yourself.
So you hope the market will just initiate it for you.
Exactly. But the market isn't a sentient being that taps you on the shoulder.
Right.
The market is entirely passive until you stimulate it. If you wait for a signal from the market before you make an offer, you will be waiting until you are bankrupt.
You have to create the conditions yourself.
You are the catalyst. The market only responds to the friction that you introduce.
And if you introduce zero friction,
By remaining totally silent and just posting free inspirational quotes all month, the market will give you zero feedback.
okay, let's co-create an analogy here to really nail this down.
Let's do it.
If a founder is doing this waiting for the perfect moment, it's like an athlete.
Yeah.
Let's say a professional basketball player.
Okay, basketball.
They're refusing to practice until they feel inspired. Imagine a point guard walking up to their coach and saying, you know, coach, I'm not going to shoot any free throws today.
I'm just waiting for the muse to strike.
Exactly. I'm waiting for the crowd to cheer at the perfect decibel, and the lighting in the arena has to hit my face just right. And then, only then, will I start practicing my shots.
And the coach would bench them immediately.
Right.
Because you do not wait for inspiration to do the reps. Doing the reps is what creates the muscle memory.
You just have to do the work.
You shoot the ball 1,000 times in a quiet, empty gym when you're tired, when you're bored, when you're completely uninspired.
So that when the lights are actually on and the game is tied, what happens?
The physical motion is purely mechanical. It requires zero emotional energy to execute. Your body just executes the procedure.
That's the golden phrase right there, purely mechanical.
Yeah.
The mechanical nature of the action is the actual goal here. We want to completely strip the volatile emotion out of the act of selling.
Completely. The exhausted seller is exhausted because every single attempt they make at selling is a massive, draining emotional performance.
They're draining their own battery, just trying to hype themselves up to get to the starting line.
So if we know that the perfect moment is a complete myth,
And waiting for it is an active form of self-sabotage.
we need a reliable replacement. We can't just sit here and tell you to stop waiting or to just be braver.
That's useless advice. Just be brave doesn't help anyone.
Right. We have to give you a structural alternative. We need to transition your entire business from high intensity to high frequency.
Okay, so we need to look at the fundamental technical distinction between intensity and normalization.
Let's define those terms right now.
Because this feels like the absolute hinge point of the whole strategy. We know we need to stop the frantic gasping for air.
Yes.
We know that momentum isn't created by intensity, it's created by consistency. So let's draw a hard technical line between these two modalities. How do you define an intensity-based model on a real day-to-day operational level?
Okay. An intensity-based model relies entirely on fleeting resources.
Fleeting resources, meaning things that run out.
Exactly. It relies on adrenaline, motivation, sheer willpower, and dramatic, concentrated effort.
Pushing the boulder up the hill.
It is rooted in the belief that if you just push harder, speak louder, write punchier copy, and manufacture enough fake urgency, you'll finally break through the noise of the internet.
But let's look at human biology again.
Adrenaline is a finite chemical. Willpower is a depreciating asset. It drains throughout the day.
It's gone by 3 p.m.
Exactly. If your sales mechanism requires you to manually pump yourself up to execute it, it's a fragile mechanism.
It will break the moment you get a cold.
It will break the moment you have a personal crisis. It will break the moment you simply get tired.
Because intensity is inherently biologically unsustainable.
I like to look at it like a fireworks show.
Okay, a fireworks show.
An intensity model is a massive fireworks display. It's incredibly bright, it booms loudly, and it absolutely gets everyone's attention in a 5-mile radius for about 12 minutes.
And then it's over.
It's totally over. And all you're left with is a cloud of sulfur smoke, a bunch of empty cardboard tubes, and total silence.
That's a great visual. You cannot run a city on the energy from a fireworks show.
You can't. If you want to keep the lights on in a city, you need a power plant.
And a power plant isn't exciting at all.
Nobody takes photos of a power plant. It doesn't sparkle in the sky. It just hums steadily, 24/7.
That steady hum that is normalization.
Exactly. Normalization relies on familiarity, not exertion.
It happens when the act of selling becomes a routine, a deeply integrated part of your daily or weekly existence.
When you normalize your offer, you are executing an action that requires almost zero emotional or physiological ramp-up.
You aren't psyching yourself up in the bathroom mirror.
No, you're simply executing an administrative procedure.
Yeah.
And the compounding long-term effect of that quiet consistency is what creates actual unstoppable momentum.
Okay, but I have to play the skeptic here again.
Go ahead.
Because I know exactly what the listener is screaming at their dashboard right now while they drive. They are thinking about list fatigue.
Ah, yes, list fatigue.
They're saying if I pitch my 500-person email list or my Instagram following every single week, won't they all just tune me out?
That's the fear.
Won't they get annoyed and hit unsubscribe in droves? We've all been taught that marketing needs to be a pattern interrupt to grab attention.
Right.
If I just become this predictable, steady background hum like a power plant, don't I just become invisible?
That is the most common fear we encounter. But it fundamentally misunderstands the psychology of the buyer.
How so?
You are not in the entertainment business. You are in the solutions business.
That's a huge distinction.
You aren't aiming for excitement or a massive dopamine hit every single time you speak to your audience. You are aiming for clarity, reliability, and trust.
So a normalized offer doesn't annoy them.
A normalized offer does not annoy the right audience. It actually removes the shock value of the pitch.
Remove the shock value. Break that down for me. What exactly do you mean by the shock value of a pitch?
Think about what happens when a creator or a brand, you follow someone who mostly just posts free tips, memes, or casual lifestyle content.
Right, you're used to just casually swiping through their stuff.
Exactly. And suddenly, out of nowhere, they pivot to a hard, aggressive sell.
It's incredibly jarring.
It is. As a consumer, you feel ambushed.
Yeah.
You think, whoa, where did this come from? Oh, here comes the pitch.
Your mental guards immediately shoot straight up.
You feel sold to, which is a highly defensive state for a human brain. That is the shock value of an intense, rare ask.
But when you normalize the offer,
When a simple, calm, clear invitation to buy is present in almost every single interaction or piece of content, there is no ambush.
there's no bait and switch.
The audience stops feeling sold to because your offer is just a permanent, reliable piece of the landscape.
Right. It's the difference between a pop-up ad and a physical storefront.
Ooh, explain that.
Imagine you're reading an article online and suddenly a massive pop-up ad screams in your face. It blocks your entire screen and it has a tiny hidden X to close it.
I hate those.
Everyone hates them. It's an intense pattern interrupt. What's your immediate instinct? You're annoyed. You are frustrated. You aggressively try to find that X to close it.
You completely resent the interruption.
That is your big push launch to an audience that isn't used to you selling.
That's exactly what it is.
But now compare that to walking down your neighborhood street every morning and passing a bakery.
Okay.
The bakery doesn't jump out of the bushes and scream at you to buy bread. They don't block the sidewalk so you can't get past.
No, they don't.
They just open their doors at 6 a.m., turn on the warm lights, and put the croissants in the window every single day.
It's totally normalized.
You don't get annoyed walking past the bakery. You don't feel fatigued by the bakery's existence.
Right.
You might not buy a croissant on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, but you know exactly where it is. You know exactly what they sell.
And on Saturday morning.
On Saturday morning, when you are hungry and finally ready to buy, you walk in without a second thought. The bakery built momentum through presence, not pressure.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it. The bakery established a permanent presence.
Yes.
When selling becomes a regular part of how you show up, your audience simply learns what you offer.
If you are constantly changing your approach, trying to be wildly entertaining, doing massive stunts,
Your core message actually gets lost in the noise of your own marketing. Normalization breeds deep, quiet comprehension.
So how does a founder who is currently terrified of selling, who is currently operating like the screaming pop-up ad, how do they actually open the bakery doors without having a panic attack?
They need a process.
Right. If we know we want to be the bakery, executing that requires a massive behavioral shift.
It requires completely stripping the emotion out of the sales process, which brings us to the procedural shift itself.
Let's get into the mechanics of that shift.
To make this shift, you have to commit to one highly specific behavioral change.
Which is
You must introduce one small, honest sales action into your weekly routine.
one small, honest sales action.
Yes. You abandon the launch, you abandon the push, you abandon all the hype, you replace all of it with a simple, clear, boundaried invitation.
Let's define honest sales action, because I really love that phrasing. The word honest is doing a whole lot of heavy lifting there.
It really is.
What does an honest action look like versus a dishonest one?
An honest sales action means an action completely devoid of manipulation.
So no tricks.
It is devoid of forced, fake urgency. So no countdown timers on the page if the cart doesn't actually close.
Oh, those fake timers drive me crazy.
They destroy trust. And an honest action is completely devoid of hype. It is simply you stating the facts.
Just the facts.
Here is a specific problem I see you having. Here is the exact solution I provide to fix it. Here is the link to access it.
That's it. When you strip away the perceived need to manufacture hype and entertain people into buying, what happens?
You strip away the emotional exhaustion of selling. You don't need to be hyped up just to state a fact.
This plays right into the concept of the emotional charge. We talk a lot about how momentum builds when selling is consistent enough to lose its emotional charge.
Yes.
What is the actual psychological mechanism happening there?
In psychology, there is a core concept called habituation.
Habituation. Explain that.
When you are exposed to a stimulus repeatedly, your emotional and physiological response to it decreases over time.
So you get used to it?
Exactly. If you have a severe phobia of public speaking, the very first time you step on a stage, your heart rate is 150 beats per minute.
Your palms are sweating, your vision tunnels.
It's pure terror. But the 50th time you step on that exact same stage,
Your heart rate barely elevates.
right, you have habituated to the stimulus. The emotional charge has fully dissipated.
So bringing it back to business.
When you only sell once a quarter, the emotional charge of that event is massive. It feels exactly like stepping onto a stage in front of 10,000 people.
But when you commit to one small, honest action every single week,
You are effectively running exposure therapy on your own nervous system.
you are systematically desensitizing yourself to the fear of the ask.
Yes. The action simply loses its power to intimidate you. It stops being a terrifying, high-stakes performance.
And it becomes a basic mechanical procedure.
It becomes administrative.
I liken this shift to the difference between going to the dentist and brushing your teeth.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
Right. Going to the dentist, for most people, is a rare, high-anxiety event.
Nobody likes it.
You have to schedule it months in advance. You dread it as it gets closer on the calendar.
You sit in that waiting room, flipping through old magazines, feeling nervous.
You hear the drill in the back.
Exactly. The procedure itself is intense. There are bright lights shining in your eyes, sharp metal tools. It's uncomfortable. It's an ordeal.
That is what a big push launch feels like. It is the invasive dental surgery of business.
And brushing your teeth.
Brushing your teeth is a daily, completely emotionally neutral procedure.
It's boring.
Totally boring. You don't need to listen to a motivational David Goggins podcast to convince yourself to brush your teeth.
You don't need the stars to align.
You don't need the perfect energy or a signal from your gums. You just walk into the bathroom and do it for 2 minutes.
It's mechanical.
It's a non-negotiable habit. Sales must become the business equivalent of brushing your teeth.
It shouldn't require a deep breath, a shot of espresso, and a pep talk in the mirror.
No. It should just be a minor, expected part of the day's routine.
And let's extend that toothbrush analogy a bit. Just like dental hygiene, the compounding results of the small daily habit vastly outweigh the results of sporadic, intense interventions.
Right. If you don't brush your teeth for a year, scheduling a massive, agonizing cleaning at the dentist isn't going to save your teeth from rotting.
The damage is already done by the lack of daily maintenance.
In your business, the daily or weekly maintenance is the quiet, consistent offer.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the internal shift for the founder.
By moving to a procedural toothbrushing model, we lower our own cortisol.
We eliminate our own anxiety, and we habituate ourselves to the ask.
But this isn't just a self-help exercise, so we feel better sitting at our desks, right?
No, not at all. This structural shift has a profound, measurable, physical impact on the market itself.
It physically alters the market's reception of your offer. Let's dig into this concept of building bilateral confidence.
This is where the strategy really compounds and where revenue actually unlocks. Consistency builds confidence for both sides of the transaction simultaneously.
Both the seller and the buyer.
Yes. Your audience learns what you offer, and you learn how to talk about it clearly.
Let's analyze the seller's side first. You mentioned earlier that repetition builds eloquence.
It does.
I think a lot of founders assume they already know how to talk about their product. They think, well, I built the thing. I wrote the 30-page Google Doc outlining all the features.
I spent a month agonizing over the font on the landing page.
Right. Of course I know how to sell it.
But theoretical, behind-the-scenes knowledge is completely useless in the live market.
Why is that?
You do not actually know how to talk about your product until you have pitched it out loud, in public, in low-stakes environments, dozens or hundreds of times.
What is the market giving you that you can't just get from staring at your own landing page in a vacuum?
You're gathering microdata, real-world feedback. When you make one small, honest sales action every week, you are receiving real-time, granular feedback.
What kind of microdata exactly? What should a founder actually be tracking here?
You're tracking behavioral nuances. For instance, you notice that when you use a certain framing in an email, the open rates spike, but the clicks are low.
Okay.
Or when you use another specific phrase on a sales call, you physically see the prospect lean in on the Zoom camera.
You track the direct messages you get.
Exactly. What specific objections are people consistently throwing back at you?
Like if 3 people reply to your weekly post saying, this sounds great, but I don't have the tech skills.
You just discovered a massive hole in your pitch. You need to address the tech skill objection.
And you cannot get this isolated data from a massive once-a-year launch, can you?
Impossible. A launch is far too noisy, it's too chaotic, and it's too emotionally charged to isolate individual variables.
There are too many moving parts.
But small, frequent repetitions act as a continuous, low-stress refinement mechanism. Your tongue actually learns the rhythm of the offer.
You stumble less.
You become infinitely more articulate, not through innate marketing genius, but through sheer, unglamorous repetition.
It's the stand-up comedian approach.
Yes, exactly like stand-up.
A great comedian doesn't write an hour-long special in total isolation in their bedroom, memorize it, and then immediately film it for Netflix in a 5,000-seat theater.
That would be career suicide.
Total suicide. They take the rough, messy jokes to a tiny, dark club on a Tuesday night.
In front of 12 people who barely even care that they're on stage.
Right. They mumble through it, they figure out the timing, they find out which specific words hit and which words fail completely.
They do that hundreds of times,
Mm.
tweaking it slightly every single night based on the audience's real-time microdata.
And by the time they film the Netflix special, the delivery is absolutely flawless.
Because the eloquence was built through low-stakes repetition.
If a founder tries to do a big push without doing the weekly reps,
They are trying to film a Netflix special without ever going to the open mic. They are going to bomb.
they will bomb hard. That is precisely what happens. You cannot bypass the open mic phase.
You just can't. And while you, the seller, are building your eloquence and confidence through these reps, an equally important neurobiological shift is happening on the audience's side.
Let's explore the audience's side. How does the audience interpret this shift from the rare, frantic big push to the consistent, quiet offer?
What's happening in their brains?
Yeah, exactly.
It comes down to the neurobiology of trust. Humans are, at our core, pattern recognition machines.
We look for safety.
Our nervous systems are constantly scanning our environments for stability and safety. If your audience only hears from you when you're desperate for cash during that frantic big push, they sense the anxiety.
They might not consciously think, oh, John is short on rent this month.
But their nervous system detects the sudden spike in your energy.
Yeah.
They detect the sudden urgency, the forced scarcity, the totally unnatural cadence of your emails.
They smell the desperation.
And desperation is the ultimate repellent of trust.
It creates a predatory dynamic. When someone only approaches you when they need something from you, you feel hunted.
Think about a bad friend.
Right. If a friend only texts you when they need help moving a couch or when they need to borrow money, what do?
You stop answering their text.
You feel like a resource being extracted rather than a person being valued.
Exactly. But if they hear a steady, calm, consistent offer from you, they perceive stability.
You are communicating to the market implicitly that your business is healthy.
That your offer is permanent and that you are not going anywhere.
You are essentially training your own audience to feel safe around your sales pitches.
I really want to pause on that concept for a second. Training your audience to feel safe around your sales pitches.
It sounds so counterintuitive to most mainstream business advice.
It really does. We are usually taught that sales is an adversarial process. It's a battle of wills.
It's about breaking down objections, overcoming resistance, pushing the prospect over the line.
But you're saying the quiet momentum model is about creating an environment of safety.
Yes, because the adversarial model is exhausting. It burns through your audience's goodwill faster than anything else.
You are removing the adversarial tension completely.
When the offer's always there, spoken calmly and clearly like the croissants in the bakery window, the audience does not feel pressured.
They don't have to make a split-second defensive decision based on manufactured scarcity.
They have the time and the space to actually evaluate your offer on its merits.
They learn that they can read your emails, watch your videos, and engage with your content without stepping on a hidden landmine of a hard pitch.
You transform your identity in their mind.
From a high-pressure, unpredictable salesperson into a calm, reliable guide who simply points out a useful tool week after week.
Okay, so we've broken down the pathology, we've deconstructed the psychology of the perfect moment and the avoidance spiral.
We understand the difference between a fireworks show and a power plant.
And we see how this builds bilateral confidence. We have the theory, we have the mechanics, we have the psychology.
Now we need the action plan.
Yes, we need to translate this into immediate, undeniable action for you, the listener. How do you execute this immediately after this audio ends? What is the actual protocol?
The protocol is surgical in its simplicity, but it requires serious discipline.
Okay, let's hear it.
You must choose one small sales action that you can repeat weekly and commit to doing it consistently.
Not daily, not sporadically.
Weekly. But the parameters of this action must be rigorously controlled if it is going to work and if you're actually going to stick to it.
What are those parameters? When we say small, how small are we actually talking?
The action must be small enough that it requires absolutely zero hype to execute. It must be a task that you can complete in less than 15 minutes from start to finish.
15 minutes?
Yes. And crucially, it must be repeatable regardless of your daily energy levels.
Yeah.
If the action requires you to drink a double espresso, do 10 jumping jacks, and listening to a hype playlist before you hit send. The action is too big.
Give me some concrete examples of what fits these parameters for a typical founder.
Sure. A simple, text-only email to your list outlining one specific problem you solve and providing a link to book a call.
That's easy.
Or a short-form LinkedIn or Twitter post stating a single thesis about your industry, concluding with a one-sentence invitation to join your program.
I like that one.
Or a direct one-on-one text or voice note to a past client asking if they need further support this quarter.
Very low friction.
Or a short-form video that follows a basic template. A hook, 3 sentences of value, and a quiet close, like, I help people do X. If you want help with X, link is in my bio.
It is profoundly unsexy.
It is so unsexy, and that is exactly why it works.
It has to be unsexy so it can be procedural. If it's sexy, it relies on inspiration, and we know inspiration is completely unreliable.
Let's map this out chronologically so they know what to expect. If a founder listening to this right now commits to the one small action protocol starting tomorrow, what does their actual psychological timeline look like? Let's walk through week 1, week 4, week 8, and week 12.
Let's do it. In week 1, let's be completely transparent. It is going to feel incredibly awkward.
Oh, it's going to be awful.
You are breaking a long-standing, deep-rooted habit of avoidance. When you draft that first simple email or post, your brain is going to scream at you.
Your inner critic will flare up big.
And tell you that you are being too pushy, that you need to add more value first, that you haven't earned the right to ask yet.
It will tell you that people will unsubscribe and hate you forever.
The emotional charge will still be very high because your nervous system is still detoxing from the big push mentality.
You'll hover your mouse over the publish button for 20 minutes, sweating, rereading a 3-sentence post 50 times.
You will, but you must push the button anyway. You are just ripping off the Band-Aid.
Now, skip to week 4.
By week 4, the dynamic physically begins to shift. You have done this 4 times now. And what has your brain learned?
The world did not end.
You didn't receive a flood of hate mail. In fact, you might have gotten a few quiet inquiries or even a sale.
The task that took you an hour of agonizing in week 1 now takes 15 minutes.
You are beginning to habituate. The emotional resistance is visibly fading.
And what happens around week 8?
By week 8, the momentum begins to carry itself. This is the true inflection point.
You are no longer forcing the action through willpower.
Right. It has become a scheduled, integrated part of your operational week, like taking out the trash or checking your email.
More importantly, your audience has now seen your offer consistently for 2 full months without any manufactured hysteria.
They are internalizing exactly what you do. The bilateral confidence is really solidifying.
You are speaking about your offer with a casual certainty that is incredibly attractive to buyers.
The storefront is officially open, the lights are on, and people walking by know exactly where the bakery is.
And by week 12, you are a different operator entirely.
You look back at the sweating and the anxiety you felt in week 1, and it seems almost absurd.
Selling is no longer a monumental event. It is just a mechanic of your business.
It is as emotionally neutral as checking your inventory, reconciling your books, or paying a utility bill.
You have proven to yourself through action that momentum does not come from trying harder. It comes from showing up with clarity.
You have successfully decoupled your revenue from your emotional state.
I think that is the most powerful sentence of this entire session, decoupling your revenue from your emotional state.
That is the ultimate freedom for a founder.
It really is. It means you can have a terrible week. Personally, you can be exhausted, uninspired, full of self-doubt, dealing with family issues.
And your business will still generate momentum and revenue because the procedure is running.
The quiet, consistent offer is out there working for you, completely unbothered by your internal weather.
It is the absolute foundation of a scalable, sustainable enterprise. You cannot scale intensity. You can only scale normalization.
That brings us to a perfect summary of everything we've covered today.
True momentum is incredibly quiet. It's the power plant humming in the background, not the 12-minute fireworks show.
It's the daily toothbrush, not the invasive dental surgery.
It's smooth, rhythmic breathing, not a desperate gasp for air. You do not need dramatic, Herculean efforts to create progress. You just need reliable ones.
We've deconstructed the pathology of the big push, we've exposed the illusion of the perfect moment, and we've given you the exact mechanical protocol to shift from emotional avoidance to procedural consistency.
Before we conclude, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final strategic question to mull over. A literal audit of your own reality.
Open your calendar and your outbox for the last 30 days. Review your sent emails, your social posts, your direct messages.
If we completely stripped away all your emotional anxiety, all your strategic planning, all your nurturing activities, and all your behind-the-scenes building,
How many actual, literal invitations to buy did you extend?
how many times did you cleanly and clearly ask the market to exchange money for the value you provide?
The gap between your internal anxiety about selling and your actual, literal output of offers is exactly where your revenue is currently trapped.
Close that gap with one small action this week.
Just one.
If you're ready to build sales momentum that feels natural instead of forced, visit 365 Freedom online to join the community. This has been a 365 Freedom strategy session.